Just watch me break it. You'll see. You're falling into me, touch me.
All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're tackling a question that popped up
Okay.
in our listener mailbag,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a great one. We get asked a lot about different aspects of the adult film industry,
Right.
but this one really got me thinking.
Yeah.
The question was basically, how do adult filmmakers actually find
Interesting.
and hire models?
Yeah.
You might think it's pretty straightforward, like, oh, just find someone attractive, and there you go.
Right. Exactly.
But trust me, it's a whole lot more complex than that.
It's a whole system. Yeah.
It really is. It's a whole industry in itself.
Yeah.
And we actually dug into some pretty interesting sources for this deep dive.
I was really surprised by some of this stuff. Yeah.
Me too. And we're going to try to break it all down for you,
Yeah.
give you a glimpse behind the curtain, so to speak.
I like that.
So are you ready to get started?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, so let's kick things off with what might seem like the most obvious route, the classic approach: talent agencies.
Sure.
We hear about modeling agencies all the time, for mainstream fashion and stuff.
Yeah.
But there are specific agencies that cater exclusively to the adult film industry.
Yeah. And it makes sense when you think about it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a specialized field. It requires a certain type of talent, a certain comfort level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I imagine these agencies provide a lot of the same services as mainstream agencies.
Yeah, for sure.
Like representing talent, negotiating contracts, things like that.
Right. Exactly.
So what are some of the big names in the adult talent agency world?
Well, some of the ones that popped up in our research were Hussy models,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
Motley models, LA Direct models.
Okay.
Those are just a few examples, but they all have pretty extensive rosters of experienced performers.
So if a filmmaker goes through an agency, they're basically getting a package deal then.
Pretty much, yeah. The agency takes care of a lot of the logistics.
Like what kind of stuff are we talking about?
Well, besides the obvious, like connecting the filmmaker with the model,
Right.
they handle things like contracts, payments, even travel arrangements if necessary.
Wow. That's pretty comprehensive.
It is. It definitely takes a lot of the hassle out of the process for the filmmaker.
I bet, but I'm guessing that level of service comes at a price.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I can't imagine it's cheap to go through an agency.
No, not at all. We're talking, upwards of $800 to $1,000 per scene for a male-female shoot.
Oh.
And that's just for the model's fee. You've got agency fees on top of that.
So you're easily looking at over $1,000 just for one scene.
Yeah, easily. And that can add up really quickly, especially if you're working on a larger project.
Yeah, no kidding. So for filmmakers who are maybe working with a smaller budget,
Right.
there must be other options, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely other ways to find models.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
Well, one route that a lot of filmmakers take is hiring local amateur models.
Local amateur models. Okay.
Yeah. And this can be a more cost-effective option, obviously.
Sure, I can see that.
But there are definitely more risks involved.
Risks in terms of...
We've got to be extra careful about verifying age and consent, for one thing.
Yeah, that's crucial.
Absolutely. And making sure everyone understands the work involved, what's expected of them.
Right.
And when you're not working with an agency, background checks, solid contracts, open communication, those become even more important.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. You're taking on more responsibility as a filmmaker.
You're essentially acting as your own talent scout and agent.
Interesting. So that's like a trade-off. You're saving money, but you're also taking on more risk and more work.
Exactly. It's a balancing act.
But hold on, we're living in the digital age, right?
We are.
There's got to be some online platforms for this kind of thing.
You would think so, right?
Like, are there job boards for this?
You bet there are.
Really?
Yeah, just like for any other industry, there are dedicated job boards for the adult film industry.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's become a really popular way to connect models and filmmakers.
So what are some of the websites we're talking about here?
Well, two of the big ones are Sexy Jobs and Porn Career.
Okay.
Those are kind of the go-to sites for a lot of people.
And what kind of information do you find on these sites?
Pretty much everything you need to know.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, listings will usually include the model's age, their location, their desired pay structure,
Oh, interesting.
and even things like drug testing policies, if that's important to the filmmaker.
So it's all about transparency, making sure both sides have the information they need.
Exactly. It's about making the process as smooth and efficient as possible.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
It sounds like it takes some of the guesswork out of the process.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
But I'm guessing there's still a lot of competition out there,
Oh, yeah, tons.
especially if you're a filmmaker trying to stand out from the crowd.
Absolutely, especially if you're new to the industry.
So how do filmmakers make themselves stand out in that kind of environment?
Well, that brings us to another fascinating part of this world industry events.
Industry events.
Yeah, think massive conventions where models, filmmakers, agents, everyone's networking and showcasing their work.
Like a giant job fair, but for the adult film industry.
Basically, yeah, you've got booths, presentations, screenings. It's a whole scene.
I can only imagine how competitive it must be.
Oh, it's incredibly competitive. You need to have a strong pitch, competitive rates, and a clear vision for your projects to even get noticed.
Yeah, so having a strong online presence is probably key too, right?
Absolutely, these days, it's almost essential.
I mean, it's 2025, everyone's online.
Exactly, and that's where social media comes in. Platforms like Twitter have become surprisingly important for finding and connecting with potential models.
Really? I wouldn't have expected that.
I know it seems a little counterintuitive, but it's true.
So are we talking about filmmakers just sliding into DMs?
It's a little more nuanced than that. Models often use specific hashtags to signal that they're open to work.
Oh, like what kind of hashtags?
Things like OnlyFans girls, lingerie model, spicy creator, stuff like that.
Okay, so filmmakers can search for those hashtags to find people whose style aligns with their vision.
Exactly. It's all about targeted searching.
Interesting, but it still sounds a little risky, like you could easily come across as creepy or unprofessional.
That's true, which is why it's so important to approach potential models professionally and respectfully.
Right, no one wants to feel like they're being spammed.
No, for sure. It's all about building relationships and showcasing your work in a way that's appealing.
Okay, so it sounds like the online world plays a huge role in this whole process.
Huge role. Yeah.
Are there any other online spaces we should know about?
Yeah, there's one more, adult forums.
Adult forums, what are those?
They're kind of like niche communities where models and filmmakers connect.
Okay.
You've got forums like Viper Girls and Kitty Cats. They're a bit more underground, but you can find some really valuable connections there.
So how do those work? Like, what do people actually do on these forums?
Well, it's a mix of things. You'll have models posting photos, filmmakers discussing projects, studios advertising their work.
Oh, interesting.
It's a place for industry professionals to connect and network.
So I guess it's like a more informal way to find talent?
Yeah, in a way, but it still requires a certain level of professionalism and etiquette.
Right. I bet so with all these different approaches, talent agencies, job boards, conventions, social media forums.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It's kind of overwhelming, actually.
It can be.
Is there any one approach that's considered the best?
You know, it really depends on the filmmaker's goals, their budget, the type of project they're working on. Each method has its own pros and cons, so it's about finding the right fit.
It's like building a toolkit, right?
Right.
You've got all these different tools, and you choose the ones that work best for the job at hand.
I like that analogy. Yeah, it's all about having the right tools for the job.
So are you ready to dive into some of these other methods in more detail?
Let's do.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more on how adult filmmakers find and hire models.
Just watch me break it. You're sweet. You're falling in me, touch me.
So we were just talking about how fan sites can be a surprising resource for filmmakers. It's interesting to see how these platforms, which were originally intended for content sharing, have evolved into something more.
Yeah, it's a great example of how the adult industry is constantly adapting to new technology. Fan sites have created this direct connection between performers and filmmakers, and it's changing the way people work.
It's like cutting out the middleman in a way. But I'm guessing it still requires a certain level of finesse to use these sites effectively for scouting talent.
Oh, absolutely. You can't just subscribe to someone's content and immediately hit them with a job offer.
Right.
It's about being respectful, engaging with their work, and showing genuine interest.
So it's more about building a rapport, first seeing if there's a good creative fit, and then taking it from there.
Exactly. And remember, many performers on these sites are very business savvy. They're running their own platforms, managing their own content, and they're looking for collaborations that make sense for them.
It's a partnership, not just a one-way street. Okay, so we've talked about agencies, online job boards, even fan sites. But what about those adult forums we mentioned earlier? I'm still a little fuzzy on how those work.
Sure, forums can be a bit more niche and require more effort to navigate, but they can also be incredibly valuable. They're like online communities where people with shared interests connect.
So in this case, the shared interest is adult filmmaking.
Right. You'll have models posting photos, filmmakers discussing projects, studios advertising their work. It's a place for industry professionals to connect.
What are some of the ways filmmakers can use these forums to find models?
Well, you can browse through threads and see who's active, look for models who fit the style you're going for. Some studios even post casting calls on forums, and you can always reach out to a studio directly and inquire about models they've worked with.
So it's like a mix of networking research and even direct outreach.
Yeah.
But I imagine there's a certain etiquette involved in using these forums effectively.
Definitely, forums are all about community, so you need to be respectful, follow the guidelines, and be clear about your intentions. Don't just barge in and start spamming people with requests.
It's about building trust and showing that you're a legitimate filmmaker who values the community.
Exactly. And the more you participate in forums, the more connections you'll make, and the easier it will be to find the right talent.
It's like any online community. The more you put in, the more you get out.
Okay.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of different approaches from the traditional agency route to these more niche online communities.
And it's really impressive how resourceful filmmakers have become in finding talent, that they're using all the tools at their disposal to connect with the right people.
It speaks to the passion and dedication within this industry.
Yeah.
But I imagine it can also be overwhelming for someone just starting out. If you're a filmmaker with a limited budget, maybe you're not ready to dive into the world of conventions or agencies.
Right. That's where those online resources become really valuable. Platforms like Sexy Jobs and Porn Career are relatively accessible, and they give you a wide range of options, and don't underestimate the power of social media.
Social media can be a great equalizer, especially for independent filmmakers.
Exactly. If you create a strong online presence, showcase your work, and engage with potential models respectfully, you can make some amazing connections.
It's all about putting yourself out there and building those relationships. Now, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about performer directories.
Ah, yes, the treasure troves of information.
You mentioned websites like IAFD and Boopedia earlier. I have to admit, I'm a little fascinated by these. They sound like a historian's dream.
They really are. They're basically giant databases with information on thousands of performers going back decades. You can find their filmographies, awards, physical attributes, even links to their social media. It's a goldmine for research.
So what are some of the ways filmmakers can use these directories? Are they just for research, or can they be used to actually connect with performers?
Both, actually, they're fantastic for research, especially if you're looking to work with a specific performer or learn more about someone's career trajectory. But the great thing is, many profiles also include contact information or links to their personal websites.
So a filmmaker could potentially bypass an agency and reach out to a performer directly through one of these directories.
Exactly. It can be a more budget-friendly way to connect with established talent. But again, even though you're reaching out directly, you still need to be professional and have a clear proposal.
Right. It's not about sending a generic message saying, hey, want to be in my film?
Yeah.
You need to treat it like any other business proposition.
Yeah.
Okay, so performer directories can be a valuable tool for both research and outreach.
Absolutely. And they're constantly being updated, so you can find information on performers at all stages of their careers.
That's incredible. It really feels like there's a resource out there for every type of filmmaker, no matter their budget or experience level.
There really is, and that's what's so exciting about this industry. It's constantly evolving and finding new ways to connect people.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break and come back to wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of finding models for adult films.
Just watch me break it. You'll see. You're falling me, touch me.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, exploring how filmmakers in the adult industry find and hire models, and it's definitely more complex than meets the eye.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just a matter of like walking down the street and saying, hey, I want to be in a movie.
Right, exactly.
There's a lot more to it.
This whole process.
It is a whole system.
So for those listening who might be interested in getting into adult filmmaking or just curious about the behind-the-scenes workings,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways they should keep in mind?
Oh, I think the first thing, and this is true for any kind of filmmaking really, is to really define your project and your budget.
Right, your vision.
Yeah, what kind of film are you aiming for? What kind of experience level are you looking for in a model? And of course, what can you realistically afford? Once you've got those basics figured out, you can start exploring the different avenues we've discussed.
Right, because there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Nope.
Agencies, online platforms, industry events, social media, even those niche forums. It's about choosing the tools that work best for you.
Exactly. And remember, each method comes with its own set of considerations. Agencies provide a certain level of security and professionalism, But at a higher cost, online platforms offer more direct connections and a wider range of talent, but require more research and vetting. It's all about weighing the pros and cons.
And throughout this whole process, and I think this is something we really need to emphasize, the ethical considerations can't be overstated. Ensuring everyone is of legal age, comfortable with the work involved, and that consent is crystal clear. Those are non-negotiables.
Couldn't agree more. It's about treating everyone with respect and creating a safe and professional working environment.
Absolutely well said. Now, I know we've thrown a lot of information out there. Any advice for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all the options?
I think the most important thing is don't be afraid to start small.
Yeah, just take it one step at a time.
Do your research, connect with other filmmakers online or at industry events, ask questions. The adult filmmaking community is surprisingly supportive, and there are plenty of people willing to share their knowledge and experiences.
That's great to hear. It's about building relationships, learning from others, and finding your own path within this multifaceted industry.
Exactly. And remember, at the end of the day, it's about passion and creativity. If you're passionate about filmmaking and you approach it with respect and professionalism, you'll find your way.
That's a great note to end on. So for everyone listening, we encourage you to keep exploring, learning, and diving deep into the world of adult filmmaking. It's a fascinating journey, and you never know what you might discover.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions about anything we discussed today or any other topics you'd like us to cover, just let us know in the comments.
We love hearing from you guys, so keep those questions coming and keep diving.
Just watch me break it.